Just which of these favors you don't want to take. Now, to go back over it again, it starts off Ar-Rahmaan, Ar-Rahmaan, no words can expand the lengths to the strengths of this mercy's extent. The 55th chapter for who? Genies and men. So which of these favors do you care to end? Now, in this poem, he repeats this line a few times in different ways. The reason why he does this is because in this surah, there's a recurring line. How many ayah in this surah? 78. Everybody should know that, right? All you're asked to do is memorize, come to class, and pay attention. Memorize, come to class, and pay attention. If you memorize, come to class, and pay attention, you will know in every surah where it came from, the length of every surah, the name of every surah, the placement of every surah, and what every surah claims generally. And then you'll be ready to study the classics in usul tafsir and to take a good study of tafsir, understanding why the mufassir is doing the things that he's doing, because you're prepared. And that's what we want to do for each other. Prepare you guys for usul tafsir from the classical direction and an in-depth study where you have some meat and potatoes and you can expound upon. There's some depth there and it's not shallow. So this is this. It has, how many ayah does it have? 78 ayah, right? 78 ayah. In those 78 ayah, 31 times the ayah فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ يُكَرِّرُهَا. It is repeated 31 times. How many is that? 78 minus 31 is what? Come on, somebody do the math with me. 47. Okay, now let's do something else also. The first 11 ayah introduce the surah. This surah is broken down into, let's say, 4 parts. The first 11 ayah, then there's another which introduce Ar-Rahmaan, and we'll talk about that when we get to it. I don't want to precede myself. That's 11 ayah. Then there's a small group of ayah that that deal with another subject. We're going to talk about that later. Then there's a third section that talk about the garden, 2 gardens. And then there's a 4th section that talk about 2 more gardens. Okay? That's 4 parts of the surah. So the first 11 ayah, take 11 away from this. What's that? 36. Now we said 31. This is 36 right here. That's almost half the ayah in this surah repeat itself. Is this such a long surah after all? 36 ayah? Actually 37 because it's repeated, and then you have to learn the 11. It's a very easy ayah if you just pay attention to it. Okay? But what's the ayah that repeats itself? فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ. Which generally here the author puts through, so which of these favors do you care to end? This is not a direct translation, but this is something of expressing the tafsir of what those lines mean, and we'll get to that when we finish the poem here. So it says, so which of these favors do you care to end? It's a question. Which of the favors of your Lord do you care to end that you don't want? Can you name one? You don't like that the air comes easy? Would you like it to be heavy and you have to search it out and breathe with real strength, like the people with asthma have to do? Would you like that your eyes be on the bottom of your feet? Allah can do that. Which of the favors of your Lord do you care to end? So he says, Meccan or Medinan, each ayah it flows. What does this tell us here? What's that? No, the first thing, start here. It says Meccan or Medinan. What does that tell us about this? This is a poem, and inside the poem, it's a rumuz. This poem is written, though it's written in English, it's written according to the shurut, the conditions set in the poetry, the classical poetry of the Muslims of old. They used to write every science in a poem. But that poem, if it was read by someone who was not taught what the poem meant, they could not understand what it meant. Because inside were rules, inside were lessons that were only made clear if the teacher taught it to you. If you read the poem of Ar-Rahmaan, you wouldn't know what it's talking about unless someone explained it to you. You know? So likewise here, there's lessons in each line. It's not just a poem. Meccan or Medinan, each ayah, it flows. What is this trying to tell us? This first poem, initial poem, tells us what we're looking for. Tafsir 101 is what we're going to do. We're going to break each surah down for every one of you from whence it came. What does it tell us here? That Meccan or Medinan. This surah, there is ikhtilaf. And how many surah is ikhtilaf? 12. In 12 surah, there's ikhtilaf amongst two. The senior scholar staff, in Fatiha, Falaq, Nas, Mutaffifin, and then Rahmanur Ra'adun Bayyina. So this is Surah Ar-Rahmaan. So then there's ikhtilaf amongst the senior scholars whether this surah is from Mecca or Medina. So what the author did, he put in this poem, Meccan or Medinan, each ayah it flows. Because some of the ulama say that certain amount of ayah are Meccan and the rest are Medinan. Yes, aluhu. From that part on. And others say, no, it's all Meccan except for 8 ayah. There's ikhtilaf. So whether the ayah is from Mecca or whether it's from Medina, if the senior scholars argue, do we argue? No. So whether they're from Mecca or Medina, we know each ayah, it flows. It's very poetic, right? So which of these ayah do you dare oppose? If you've read the surah, which of those ayah, how many ayah? 78. 70 ayah do you oppose? Which one of them are you against? Which one do you reject? None. There's 78, tells us. There's 78, what is he referring to here?
Does that have any ayah?
Theirs refers back to the last thing mentioned. It's talking about the ayah, right? There's 78 ayah, right? Recite them and think. Allah tells us in the Quran, don't they think, don't they consider about the Quran? So we're taught by Allah and we're ordered by Allah to think about the ayat of Allah, the signs of Allah, and these ayat in the Quran. Recite them and think just which of these favors you don't want to take. Which one of them don't you want to go with you out of this anywhere? Excuse me? It's the same type of question. And the reason why it's done almost every time, why is it done like that? It's teaching you, it's a subtle way of teaching you that in this surah, almost every other line is فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ. Which of the favors, which of the blessings of your Lord do you deny? Do you all reject? And it's repeated almost every other ayah. As we see here, it's repeated. It's out of 31. It's 31 times repeated at about basically 36 ayah. That's almost every other ayah after the first 11, right? And the meaning of that question is all of that what you said here. It's which one of these favors do you care to end? And which one do you oppose? And which one don't you want to take? It's all of that's how comprehensive the Quran and the language of the Quran is. That though the wording doesn't change, the meaning is so multifaceted and comprehensive that at the same time it means all of this. Does that make sense? Yes. Okay, and again, this poem, I like it. It really rhymes, to me. It rhymes nice. So, and that's also a reminder of how that surah, some people consider that surah the most rhythmic surah in the Quran. That's up to some ikhtilaf. Some people have their personal opinion about that. I don't want to get into that. But, of course, that repeating ayah goes on. And you will note that I never call the ayat of Quran verses. This, to me, is a mistake in the English language. Because a verse is, Abdus-salaam wa rahmatullah, is kinayatan or in place of poetry. Okay? And the Quran directly rejects the idea that this is any type of poetry. So these are not verses. Okay? These are ayat. Just like we call someone a Muslim, and we don't explain the whole terminology that a Muslim is someone who's in Islam, and we don't say that. We say he's a Muslim. And the people get accustomed to calling them the Muslims.